Hi everyone, you've definitely heard of the name ChatGPT, and you would probably know that it sucks at chess. Today we're going to talk about a bot which, unlike ChatGPT, is quite good at chess. Its name is AlphaZero. AlphaZero is a program developed by the DeepMind department of Google, and it is assigned to learn chess from scratch. In the 4 hours it was given, it played millions of games against itself, refining its strategy and finding the best statistical way to play the game of chess. In 2017, AlphaZero and Stockfish were programmed to have a match. Stockfish was, at that time, the strongest chess bot known, so the result was about to shock everyone. Out of the 100 games which the two bots played, AlphaZero won 28 and drew the rest of them, meaning that Stockfish didn't win a single game. Although, you could rightfully argue that Stockfish had less access to study resources, but it's still an amazing achievement. So, without further ado, let's get into it. AlphaZero had the white pieces, and opening it with the move knight f3, knight f6 by Stockfish, c4, c4, b6, d4, and e6. So we have transposed into what's known as the Queen's Indian defense. The bishops are very flexible, just like the Namzo Indian. You go to these two squares, each of them. And after we commit the bishops, you can also commit the pawns, whether you're going to play d5, c5, or a combination of the two. So g3 is played right now. Until now, nothing special. This is the main move here, and bishop a6. So bishop a6 is all about creating weaknesses. There are two main ways to defend it. Both of them have a problem. For example, if you play with b3, then your dark squares are a little bit weak. I will play bishop to b4 check, and after bishop d2, I will just drop back. And I say that your bishop wanted to be on b2, not on d2, so I essentially have forced you to create a concession. But if you play queen c2, which is the other main way to defend the pawn, this also has another concession, which is that you no longer control the d file. I'll play c5. Of course, d5 is still tactically possible, because after takes, you cannot take the pawn, because I'll play queen e4 check. And you either defend the knight and lose the rook, or just don't defend the knight and lose the rook, and lose the knight anyway. So, after c takes d5, bishop e7 is played. And if you take notice, you would see that the pawn is undefendable now. If you play e4, I'm going to play queen e7, and the situation is going to be even worse than the last time, because both d5 and e4 are hanging due to the pin, of course, on the pawn. So, you have to part ways with the pawn. After bishop e7, AlphaZero played bishop g2, and just simply gives away the pawn. Simple. And the next move I really like by Stockfish, not Stockfish, of course, but AlphaZero, simply castles. You have to learn at some point to just simply be able to give up a pawn, for example, give up material, and not expect anything immediate in return, right? It's like investing in Bitcoin back in the old days and not expecting anything for quite some time. The advantage is quite long term. And if you get, sort of creative enough and have that creative gut, you will, of course, be able to get some such games. Of course, I also had to listen to my own advice because it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. So knight c6 here by Stockfish, rook d1, and now bishop e7. So the knight is not actually hanging, because if you take, I'll play knight b4, and you're going to lose the rook anyway, full rook actually. So after the move bishop e7, queen f5 was played by AlphaZero. Now genuinely threatening to take the knight because there won't be any fork afterwards. Knight f6, and now e4. This is the compensation, the extra space, and the weakness of this d pawn, and also the square, which is of course up for grabs. Now, I'm threatening to play e5 and just send your knight to the home, to where it came from. So there's only one move to hang around equality, that is the move pawn to g6. I really like this move, of course. It just creates this platform on h5 for the knight. Queen f4 is played, short castles, e5, and now knight h5, queen g4. So the pawn here is just hanging. But the whole point of the white opening, and if you do not know much about AlphaZero, it's a bot which tries to suppress its opponents, even if it means giving up a few pawns. And this pawn essentially is like something which is a wall which you want to put a window in its place, but you just cannot, because I'm not gonna let you. This pawn is gonna stop the pieces from circulating and connecting with the center of the board. So that's why they would be worse with the pawn, paradoxically. So, rook e8 is played, simply says, okay, come on, take it, I would really appreciate it if you take it. No, knight c3, I'm gonna go for the d5 square. Queen b8, Come on, take it, man. I'm gonna take yours though. If you don't, no, knight d5. I think I'm fine. So the bishop just moves out of the way, and now this pawn is of course hanging. So bishop f4 just takes care of business. Now to move queen c8. So it says, okay, you had your chance to take, you didn't, so I'm gonna defend it now. And the more important thing is that we're trying to go for the move pawn to d6, trade off the weakness, and also the queens, which would probably mean a victory for black. So we're trying to avoid the queen trade with the move pawn to h3. Well, this is of course very surprising. How does this avoid a queen trade? They can still play d6, of course, right? The reason is that now the queen is defended. I don't have to do anything about this tension. I can just take. And if you like play queen takes, and for example, when knight takes, pawn takes, I have still a very good position. You cannot, of course, take because of the move knight to f6 check. I'm not very strong pass pawn, and I am probably better here. After the move h3, however, Stockfish played 97, offering a trade of pieces. And if you, of course, know your principles, you would know that when you're down material, you shouldn't trade pieces. Of course, there's some exceptions. 93. AlphaZero shows great principle. There's a principled bot. Goes out, and after the move bishop to c6 and defending the pawn, you may say, what is the way to like get in, right? How do we get in? Because there is no target on the d file. How do we even get in? Rook d6. That is the way we're gonna get in. We're gonna get in with brute force. Come on, let's go. Right? Look at these weak dark squares, right? If like imagine a scenario where this bishop and this bishop were to get traded, that would be amazing. That would really be amazing. So after the move, knight goes back to g7, rook f6. Simple. So we're simply trying to go for suppression. We're trying to suppress them, put eyes on everybody. You know, like everything is protected. They cannot push forward. Queen to b7 is played here. We're trying to create some battery over here and stop this knight from moving. Bishop to a6. Now, the reason for this move is to say, okay, whenever you move the knight, I'll be able to trade bishops, and this is going to be very good for me. So, knight d5 is played. Here, your rook is also hanging, so you cannot really just avoid a trade. So, knight takes and bishop takes. Now, rook d1. The final piece is in the game. And there's a lot of pressure overall here. Now, the knight goes to e6, and as we said, takes. We just trade. Now there's another problem for black, which is the dark squares, which are very weak. Queen h4, trying to go here, and perhaps like knight g5 ideas later in the game. Of course, this knight has to be gotten rid of. So now, the bishop goes to c6, queen h6. Going for actual threats on this pawn, on this knight. This move defends it, the threat, because if you want to sack, I will now take with the f pawn, very important. And if you play knight g5, I'll play rook e7, and everything is defended. And you're going to be losing because you can no longer suppress me, really, like you did. You're going to trade even more pieces afterwards. So, after the move rook a to e8, AlphaZero played rook d6. That is the whole idea. Now we're actually threatening to take. With this, rook d6 was played. And now the move, bishop takes. On f3, you have to just get rid of the knight because there's so many lines. Bishop takes f3, and now queen e6. So, we would say that, okay, we planted all these pieces over here. What do we do next? h4. Very good. We're simply trying to get our pawn over and perhaps open up the position. Or is it the purpose? The queen goes to a5. So, the threat is to play queen e1 check and then take on here, after which everything just gets destabilized. I'm not going to really be able to have compensation for it. So, rook e1, rook d1. It's pretty inconsistent, right? AlphaZero says to Stockfish, okay, I acknowledge your threat, time to back up. And now the minute Stockfish plays c4 and tries to have even more counterplay, says, no, I think I'm fine with letting you in. Rook d5 defends the pawn, of course, is the queen. Queen d1 check, and now king g2. And of course, the reason is this pawn is not hanging anymore. That is the key. Some pawns you just cannot give away because those will stop your attack. The loss of those. Of course, c3 takes, just chalking off the pawn. And here you really do not want to take because then I'll lose e5. So we just simply play h5, continue with that plan. So this is a very nice sequence. of moves. Queen a5. For a few moves, black gets that play. Many of us would really get nervous, say, oh no, I just missed everything, you know, or whatever. No, simple. Defend the threat. Then say, okay, there is no threat anymore. Because they defend the pawn. And after their counterplay sort of runs out for even a single move, pawn to h5. Just go back with your old plan. Now, Zero goes to e7, sort of trying to defend it. Defend everything. And now to move bishop to d1. Another very, very instructive move. This bishop, in the beginning, was exerting a lot of pressure on the long diagonal. But there's nothing else remaining here. So we simply are going to bring our final piece into an active post. We're trying to get it to b3, where it will be very, very strong. So, queen to e1, and now bishop to b3. And now rook goes to d8, simply just defending everything. Very, very passive structure, however. Rook now drops back. Again, inconsistent. Why did we drop back with the rook? There was no threat even, right? What the hell are we doing? Queen goes to e4, and now queen d2. What the hell is going on? Well, the idea of AlphaZero is a very rational one. Since we've got more space and their pieces are extremely cramped, just look at these rooks, right? It's like they don't even exist. We can easily transfer our pieces to this side of the board, okay? And have a lot of play. Of course, I'm not good at throwing arrows. And we're trying to take advantage of such weaknesses. The queen goes to g4, having eyes on this pawn. And now I play bishop to d1. Now if you try to take, of course, the rook takes f7 is deadly. So yeah, here, after the move bishop to d1, queen to e4 was played. And now we're going to seal the door shot h6. Beautiful move. A very nice move, come on. We gain the space, now it's, again, all about suppression. The king cannot go forward, the king mobility, something which apparently AlphaZero believes in. It believes in active kings, even in the middle of the game, to have like some space to go over to, right? A lot of space the king has. And after the move, knight goes to c6, we're just simply going to be playing here. Now, of course, it's chucking the pawn, but if you take, well, there are even more problems, because, for example, I can play something like rook e3, I guess, and then you're probably just going to lose on the dark squares, right? Because there are too many problems for your position. Now, after the move rook d6, then I goes just simply back to the e6 square, and now sort of says, okay, I'm guarding such checkmate. I'm not genuinely threatening to take the pawn, but AlphaZero said, fine, go ahead, bishop b3, simple. The queen takes on e5. Stockfish is up 2 pawns right now, but they're still losing. That's amazing. Like, seriously, see, these 2 rooks are so weak. That is the reason. Now the rook goes to d5 and essentially is cutting everything. You either stay on this diagonal or you get killed, right? Because then I will have a lot of play, possible sacrifices of rook d6 takes, and then getting with my queen over here. So we just try to stop everything. Now, the queen goes to h8, right? Very passive square, which lets us, of course, take control of the entirety of the game and entirety of the board. But let's say they play queen a1, right? Sort of trying to hang around. The idea here was to play rook c3. The idea was to play rook c3, and now the queen is essentially in jail. It cannot go anywhere. Just it's amazing, right? These are controlled with the king. These are controlled with the queen. And this is, of course, the only square, I guess. There are also still problems with it, though. You can just still block it off. And an amazing thing, really, I gotta say. The queen is out of the game. So after rook d5, the queen goes to h8. And now we just gain full custody to the queen b4. And now we're hitting this rook. So the knight goes to c5. And you may think, okay, what is the move, right? Let's play some attack, maybe. I don't know. I'm gonna go g4, g5. Is this the idea? No. The idea is the damn move rook takes on c5. We're down 2 pawns. So what do we have to do? We have to sack the exchange. That's what we gotta do, bro. So, takes, and just simply removing the most active piece for black. And now this very nice move. There's only one way to defend everything. The rook and also f7. Rook here. And now the only move, rook to f6. Beautiful. Very, very beautiful. The queen is essentially in jail, of course in chess. And the idea is just essentially just glue it to this f6 square, the rook, and to just force the queen to stay around here and be able to do nothing. So, the rook goes to f8. This is essentially the move which multiplies the advantage by 4 for white. Stockfish himself I preferred this setup with the move king to f8 after something like queen f4 increasing pressure on f7 to play here. So at least you have some sort of a more mobility, but of course queen c7 will still come and you're losing. You gotta give up all your pawns on the queen side. So after the move rook f6, rook f8 was played, and after this move, like you simply have to just defend this with everything you got. The queen is also just not moving anywhere. So a5 is played. Just you can only move your pawns. G4 again. Yeah, you talked about trying to go with g5. d5 takes and rook d7, trying to sort of give that pawn to be a bit more active. Bishop c4. The move rook d4 of course doesn't work because of the takes on here, and this is essentially a back rank checkmate. Again, props, full props to the pawn on h6 for helping us do this. So after the move pawn to a4 from white for black, g5, simple. Now this queen is glued here forever to the h8 square. The rook is also glued to f6. a3 is here played, and now just queen f3. We know that you cannot really move away with your pieces, so I'm just simply going to play you rook c7 and takes. Now you have another problem. You have to deal with this pawn going forward. Well, the queen is sacked, and now you're simply trying to hang around, but you just simply can't. a4 here is played, and Stockfish simply resigned in this position because not only do you have back rank problems, not only do you have a weak f7 pawn, not only do you have a weak c5 pawn, not only your rooks are inactive, not only your king is very inactive, my pawn is also gonna go forward. My king can also go forward. I mean, like, that is also very possible. Thanks for watching this far. I would assume that you would also like this video, although it wasn't played by engines, as in this game. However, one side in particular played near engine level chess. See you later.